Okay, this is going to be a little bit different than my typical videos. This is my instrument panel, which I've shared with a few different builders. And sometimes I come back with questions. Now, the basic features of the holes and cutouts are pretty simple for somebody who's beginning with Solidworks, but sometimes the text engraving, and in one case a gentleman is asking me about these lines that I made, and then the box that surrounds this placard right here. It's a sheet metal part which I unfolded and sent to SendCut Send. This actual exact instrument panel is in my plane right now. First thing I'm going to do is, if you look over here on the left edge, there's this small tab with a dot on it. I'm going to click on that and it's going to pull up the history or the feature tree. There's a bunch of different names for it. This is all of the crazy thoughts that went into designing this instrument panel. Now I have come along here and renamed everything. You're going to see how cluttery it gets if you don't. But if you just have a simple part, it's really no big deal. So on this surface right here, I'm going to create some text. I'm going to create a line, and I'm going to create a box as 3 separate operations. So here we go. Now my workflow is to click on the surface where I want something. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click on the Sketch tab. And so it orients everything so we are normal to this surface. And I'm going to create a line out here, but before I click on anything, I'm going to click For Construction, which means looks kind of like a center line feature. The length I'm not really concerned about. You'll notice the way that the SolidWorks sketch tool has some kind of snap features, if you'll call them that. That's to make a horizontal line. I can make a vertical line. I can make a line that comes to the end of something that already exists, or the midpoint. Or if I come down here, it would be the center of the circle, or even tangent to the circle. Pretty powerful features. But in this case, I'm just going to click a line. I'm actually going to make this too short on purpose. Come back and explain why in a little bit. Now the sketch tool assumes that I'm going to keep chaining together elements until I create a rough shape. But I'm not going to do that. I don't need it. I just need the one line. So I'm going to hit Escape key. And there's a line. We create text by using this icon up here with the A on it. First thing you're going to notice, it's asking me for a curve and then the text that I want to have on here. The curve, as you can see by the squiggly line, it implies that there could be a line or an arc or a spline curve, which is just this kind of randomly looking thing. When I click on this line, it's going to auto-populate into there. Now I'm going to click in the box for the text that I want. Now this might be the text that I want, but it's not the size that I want. So what I'm going to do is uncheck this box that says Use Document Font, and I'm going to click on the Font Radio button. I could come in here and change the font type, and I could do bold, italic. Knock yourself out. What I'm in here to do is click points, and 16 is the size that I've used on most of the rest of my instrument panel. You can see some it's a little bit bigger, some a little bit smaller, but in general, this is what I'm using. Now I can click on this little green accept or this one up here. Now these are how we get out of a sketch. If I click on X, it's going to discard everything here and throw me out to the screen I started on. And this one will accept this sketch and close it. Continuing on with my workflow, we're going to go over to the Features tab, which is where we make solid modeling features. We extrude things, we can make surfaces of revolution, all kinds of cool stuff. The one we want to use is Extruded Cut, which is how I created these cutouts for my USB chargers, where my MX1 displays go, and it's also what we use for engraving the text. I'm going to show you 2 different ways. If I just click on Extrude Cut, SolidWorks plays dumb. Like, oh my gosh, what is it you're going to do? Where are you going to start? So the workflow I always use, if you come down to the bottom of the feature tree, the most recent thing I created is Sketch 46. Now if I click Extruded Cut, it makes some assumptions. So if we start here at the top, where it says blind, when we open this up, there's a bunch of different options in here. I'm going to explain 3 of them real quick, and we're going to use blind. Through all, if I had a complex box, let's say it's made of, it's a toolbox with a bunch of different dividers, and I made text and I said through all, it would fire like a gun through every single layer of the part perpendicular to the screen. If I just click up to next, it will go through this layer of sheet metal to the back side and cut all the way through. So you see for a part like this, which is a single piece of sheet metal, through all and up to next are functionally the same. Anyway, we're picking blind. Now the number I have used here is 5/1000ths of an inch. And I'm going to click accept. Now it has that funny look, but if I just click anywhere out in the open or hit escape, text that I want. Now see how that construction line doesn't appear here. So now we know how to make text a little bit, but what happens if we decide we want to change what it says, or we figured out that we misspelled something, or I want to move it around on here because you just saw that I threw it on here anywhere. So on this cut extrude, if I click on this arrow, it expands the two things that are inside. The cut extrude was what made it 5/1000ths of an inch and burned it into the face of the part. This is the sketch where we created that construction line and the text. I do not want to save this because that would mess up my part file. So on sketch 46, I'm going to double click. Now let's say I just want to move this around to a different location. I can drag this line up or down, and then when I let go, the text will follow. I can also, if I move this end, you'll see that the text is left justified, so it will follow this end. But you'll see what's here is not the box where I created the text or put it on the line. This is just the line itself. But if I hover over the text and it highlights like that and double click on that, now it comes up with the position where we entered this. And by the way, yes, you can see the ability to make things upside down, make them spelled backwards, because let's say you're making a printing press. You can see where it gets left justified, center. All these are going to be pretty common. Play around with them. Now, earlier I said I don't really care about this line length. It can be random, but one thing it has to be is at least as long as the text that I'm putting on here. For example, I come back in here, and I change that so it's text that I really don't want, and click OK. I'm going to click out here so you can see what I did to myself. It's kind of a mess. So I'm going to come back in here and double click on the line. And if I grab this point and drag it out, it has to be, again, longer than the word that I'm choosing. Still not long enough. There it is. Oh, another thing, while I'm in here, I can make multiple lines of text, which is what I did up above there. And it's really all based on that original construction line I made. I'm going to accept this. Okay, easy enough. Now I'm going to create a line on the screen. I'm going to create a new sketch. So what am I going to do? I'm going to click on the surface where I want to create it. Up here to the Sketch tab. Create a line. I'm going to zoom in here. And this one is not for construction because I am going to create a feature with it. Notice that I am, again, just spitballing this on here, and how the sketch tool thinks I'm going to keep stringing segments. I just hit escape. Here's my line. That's everything for this sketch. I don't have to create any width for it. I'm going to accept this sketch. I'm going to come down here and click on sketch 47, back up to the features tab, extruded cut. It's already set to blind. It's set to 5/1000ths of an inch. But here's the problem. This line has no width. So ironically, we're going to use thin feature to make it thicker. Over here you can see a preview that it's going to make it 0.10 inches wide, 1/10 of an inch. I have found in general that I like 30/1000ths of an inch or 0.03. And I'm going to accept that. There it is, I created a line to match the engraving for my lettering. I can double click on the sketch again. Maybe I want to get it up here where it's closer. Maybe I want to change the length. And I'm going to accept that. I'm going to save the sketch. And it's going to regenerate the cut extrude thin 1. So far so good. So now we've done the two different things. We made some text, we edited the text, we moved it around, we created a line, we used the extrude cut thin feature, and now we're going to create a box. And it's almost exactly the same as how we just created the line. What am I going to do? I'm going to click where I want this thing to happen. Up here on the sketch tab, here's a rectangle tool. Rubber band around here. I'm just eyeballing that. There's nothing else here to click except OK. And now I'm going to save that sketch and exit. Thin rectangle box. Hopefully you're catching on. I'm going to click on Sketch 48, up to Features, Extruded Cut. It still remembers that I'm going to go blind, 5/1000ths of an inch thick, thin feature. When I select that, 30/1000ths of an inch, now I'm already getting a preview of what it's going to look like. And I can dynamically rotate right now, and you can see what's going on. I want you to look at one feature right here. Under the thin feature with the one direction, which I'm not going to explain right now, if I click on the reverse direction, watch what happens to this. Now what happened? Now the rectangle I drew is the inside border, but if I flip this button right here, now it's the outside border. So by doing this, I'm just toggling which direction do I want the 30/1000ths to take place. It's also quite possible when you get in here that you will not see thin feature showing up. If that's the case, it'll have these and one of them is already clicked. So just uncheck whatever's going there. Thin feature will pop up. And now I'm back in business. I'm going to click accept that one. And I'm good. Now anybody who's a little bit OCD is probably freaking out right now because there's big wide spaces. This doesn't line up with this. Looks pretty sloppy. So let's learn how to make things a little tighter. And what I'm going to do is create a box that's inside the same sketch. So cut extrude thin number 2. See how this is starting to get kind of sloppy down here. Cut extrude 1, sketch 46. These things don't have names. So I can actually click on this once, right click, feature properties, and I'm going to put things. And this is just going to be right click, feature properties, line. I have my caps lock on, so it's pretty sloppy. I'm just trying to show you how this works. And I'm just going to call this one Bob. Now you can see the arrow. This one shows that the tree is expanded. And this one I need to expand a little bit. Sketch. I'm going to double click on Sketch Bob. And I'm going to create another box using that same rectangle feature that I created before. Now again, you can see the snap tools where it could, if I click on this, when I start this, and I bring it over here slowly, pop, if I just click this right now, it will currently be lined up, but there's nothing permanent about that. So watch what happens here. If I accept this, I can move this any place. So it won't stay lined up. Pretty easy to mess that up. All right. So I just backed out of that. I'm going to create this rectangle again. I'm going to intentionally mess this one up. And then I'm going to show you how to associate them so that everything is lined up smoothly. I'm just going to start over here on the left side by picking that line. I'm holding down Control, and I'm going to click this line. And again, SolidWorks is very intuitive. If I select collinear, it's telling SolidWorks that I want this line to always be lined up with this line, no matter what. I'm going to click Accept. Now, so this is a shadow feature left over because of course, you can see Bob here needs to be regenerated. the little stoplight, it'll regenerate automatically when we're done. So these edges line up. These ones look kind of like they line up, but you can see I can move this wherever I want to, and I can also change the size and the alignment this way. The only thing that's locked in is this left edge. So I'm okay with things that just look right, but a lot of people are going to be struggling with that. They're going to want things to be nice, neat, numeric values. So if I click on Smart Dimension up here, I'm just going to pick this top line, and you see that it's 4.4362 blah 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 long. Let's just round that down to 4 inches. I just hit 4, hit enter, and it changes the length of that. That didn't look exactly right, so I can actually double click on that again and say, let's go 4.5. I kind of like that. Click accept. So now that I have the 4.5 inches up here, I'd like to make this one the same. I could do, this is actually the rookie way of doing it. I could make this, say 4.5. Nothing wrong with that, right? Or, teach you a new trick. Smart Dimension. I'm going to pull this one up, and I'm just going to slap that number out here. This time when it comes up with the actual dimension, 4.753, blah, 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 I'm going to hit equals. And now I'm going to cursor select this 4.5 inch dimension up here. See, it's changed to a little bit of a formula, and I'm going to click OK. Now, why is that cool? Because what happens if I change this dimension to 4.3? It changes the other one at the same time. I wouldn't have to come back to this one and change it to 4.3. Two different boxes, who cares? But if I'm changing a sketch that has a lot of different features in it, this makes less work. Okay, another cool trick. Let's do the Smart Dimension. And by the way, I usually don't pick this edge to come up with that. I pick, in this case, I'm doing top and bottom. And there's a reason for that I'll explain some other time. Let's say this is 1.3. I'm just going to enter that. And I'm still in Smart Dimension. I'm going to click this and this. And it's some other number. I could make it be equals, right? But let's say I want it to be half the size. I can say equals this number divided by 2. That would be the forward slash. Accept that. So now, if I come back in here and I make this, let's just make it a nice inch, because I'm going to screw that up. This is a half inch. It's always proportional. I'm going to accept. I'm going to get out of the sketch, and remember, we had already created that 30,000 slide. And when I exit Bob down here, it's going to regenerate that 30 thousandths wide, 5 thousandths deep rectangle. So there it is. I've created some text. I created a line, and I created a rectangle, and we went a little bit further than I intended. We created another rectangle, and we associated it. And you might be wondering if you can create a line and a rectangle inside the same sketch. And the answer is maybe. Sometimes Solidworks will differentiate between a closed contour, which a rectangle is, and an open contour, which would be, say, this rectangle with one leg missing. And bottom line, no pun intended, is that this is technically an open contour by being just a line. So it may let me get away with it, but then when I come in to mess things up and rearrange, it might choke and come up with an error. So I would just suggest, especially if you're beginning, create the lines separately from the boxes. Okay, one last thing I forgot to include. Kind of a neat feature. Again, I'm going to use SketchBob here. Let's say I want to control the distance between this box and that one and throw in a dimension. If I click on Smart Dimension, that line and this one, and throw out a number. Now we're expecting me to throw in, round this off to 1.25 or something like that. What if I wanted it to be 25 millimeters? I could put 25, hit MM, done. It does a conversion for me. Now an unintended consequence of this is another teachable item. I'm going to hit Control Z and I'm going to get rid of that. If I want things to not move, I can click on this line at the top, for example. I don't want that to come down. Again, intuitive nature of SolidWorks. The anchor fixes things so they don't move anywhere. Now if I change this to 25 millimeter, done. When things are fully defined, they turn black. So in this case, this one is anchored. This one is 1 inch from there. This is 25 millimeters, where it does the conversion. See why it's kind of neat. You could have something that's of a metric piece of hardware you're trying to install somewhere. Rather than having to do any conversion yourself, just throw in the numbers in their native format. And then continuing on, so this one is fixed because that one and this one are connected by a dimension, and so is this one, the 1/2 inch, so they're black. I can also dimension this end to a known feature. As soon as I click on that, a bunch of stuff's going to turn black because it's all controlled. If I change this number, of course, everything's going to move. And remember that collinear feature, I could also make this box line up with this one. Collinear. Now, of course, that's going to mess up my text location, but you can see how I can use pre-existing features and line new things up to it. What I can't do is get in a time machine when this is important and I want to make that move, because this was created a long time ago, and this is the new feature. You can't really do it that way. Anyway, just new ideas. So I'm going to turn right around and create another tutorial, shorter than this one, on how you want to prepare this file to send to Send Cut Send, and also to send to whoever you have do your laser engraving, if that's the way you're going. That's it. Talk to you later.